let's talk about DBT and coping skills and trauma and anxiety and depression. And what I really wanted to do was talk about the things that light me up, which is the intersection between science and spirituality. Because my first career was as a scientist, and I was nervous to write about it there. And so when I joined Substack, I started from scratch intentionally. I didn't bring over any of the subscribers because I just wanted the freedom to write about other things that felt riskier,
Mm.
spirituality, consciousness. And I'm going to use the term woo, even though it is sort of derogatory, but I think we're reclaiming it. We're reclaiming woo as something positive. And it's been such a warm reception. And I remember the first, I forget what, I think the first post that I put out there that I was nervous about was, um, what if woo is what science hasn't explained yet or something like that? And I was like, oh God, am I really going to do this? Yes, I'm really going to do this. That's why I'm here. And I was blown away by the reception. So that's what brought me to Substack, and what keeps me here is these kinds of conversations, whether it is on a live, on a chat, on a private one-to-one Zoom chat, and meeting people who are real. And I've developed some actual true friendships here, and that blows me away.
Hmm.
By the way, I tend to ramble a little bit, so feel free to just be like, Linnea, you're talking too much.
No, that's great. It's great. Um, yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm discovering this friendship thing. It's like, oh, this is a platform that actually facilitates connection, which begs the question what those other social media platforms are doing all along, but we won't get into that. Um,
Well, we all know what the answer is. We don't have to say it out loud.
right, exactly. Harvesting our attention for corporate interests.
Mhm.
But um, I have a question. It's a big question. And I think it's the question that your whole Substack is about. I'm just curious to hear what you would say right. How does healing happen? That's what your Substack is called. Healing. What is that? How does that work?
There is no short answer to that. And the reason, so that's sort of a name that's been bumping around my mind for a while now. Um, and the thing is, because my first career was as a scientist, I still think in that way to some degree. And I think about the mechanism of action of how a thing happens. And sure, we learn all the theories in school, and okay, those are theories, but those are theories about illness. What about the theories about healing? And sure, I can tell you about DBT and parts work and theoretically how they work, but really, what is the mechanism of action? Um, and so that's what I'm attempting to get at. I don't have a clean answer yet. I have many thoughts around this, and that's why my Substack is somewhat broad because it comes from a lot of different angles. Um, but my hope is that they all are connected to that particular question. One answer is that we come from one of three different places. We are either cognitively focused, which in my first career, everything was cognitive. I lived in my mind. That was my safe space. It still is my safe space.
Mhm.
Some people are very head focused. Some people are very heart focused. Everything is the emotions, is what they feel. And some people are very body focused. And we tend to come from one of those three places and exclude the other two. And so one of the mechanisms to me is integrating the inferior functions, the ones that we don't pay attention to. So, for example, when I went back to school for psychology, I specifically chose a school that was less about the theory because I know that I'm very heady and more about the experiential. And I went from the power suits and the stilettos to Birkenstocks and sitting on the floor in classes. And it was That's what my body needed. So that's part of it. The relationship is a huge part. And I've been writing about that, or I wrote quite a bit about that in January with the series about Chloe. And Chloe is a pseudonym for a client I've worked with for a decade, and how the relationship was the most important thing. It's not the technique, it's not the intervention. All of that plays a role, but you have to have the container, and the container is the relationship.
Mm.
Um, somebody asked, well, I go in every couple of days and I try and respond to all of the notes and the comments. And I was responding to people earlier today, and someone had said, so what are your recommendations for going from anxious to secure attachment? And the recommendation is you need to find that safe person. You need to find that relational container that allows you to drop in, that allows your body to begin to recognize resonance, safety. Okay, now right there, you just did it. You took a deep breath, right? As I was talking, you went, something in your body recognized what I was saying, and your body said, yes, that is what is needed. That ability to breathe deep, to soften, and to drop in. Um, it, it- I mean, I could go on for hours and still not fully answer that particular question of how healing happens, but those are a couple of the aspects.
Mhm. Yeah.
So if you can see any comments or questions, I can't on my end, but if people have questions, please, drop them in the chat.
Yeah, I would love that. We had one comment that someone's complimenting your necklace, wonderful opalescent owls.
This is
French.
actually a mala. I started making malas when I started going on this spirituality and psychedelic psychotherapy journey.
Amazing. Yeah, and so that's my other curiosity. You mentioned before that you're a trauma survivor. Maybe you've written more specifically about that, but I haven't seen it. Um, I'm curious, like what was your journey that, without having to get too deep into it, like that led you from your trauma now being healed enough, at least, to heal others, and what I imagine a tale.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't written about it on Substack. I probably will at some point. I was on a podcast. Oh my gosh, maybe 2016. It's the Trauma Therapist podcast with Guy McPherson. And
Mhm.
I did talk a little bit about it there. So, I mean, this is the archetype of the wounded healer. And I think the best healers fall into that category. There's a reason it's an archetype. So I grew up on a farm in Maine. Um, and I'm very glad that I did, because nature is very important to me. I'm very connected to nature, but it was a hard life. And I won't go into the details, but yeah, there was quite a bit of trauma in my childhood. And like many trauma survivors, I blocked it out.
Mm.
And in my oh, early 30s, it started to bubble up. And I think as we start to feel safe, those memories come up, and it's almost like we have sometimes I'll say to my clients, it's like you put your trauma in a wooden trunk, like a treasure chest. You wrapped it in chains and you dropped it into the bottom of the Mariana Trench because you never wanted to think about it again. But over time, that wood starts to break down and the trauma bubbles up and it comes up into your awareness. And that was happening for me. So I was a very mystically oriented child, and very spiritually oriented, but I put that away as well because that was not encouraged in my household. And I went down the road of science, the road left brain, yeah, things I could understand, things I could control, things that people who've been traumatized are looking for because they don't have control and they don't understand. And I went from, I know this is long winded. I'm hoping it still tracks. I went from research scientist into biotech marketing. And because I was looking for more interaction with people, I recognized that the ideas of science were interesting. I loved it. My left brain loved it. I still geek out over it, but it wasn't satisfying. It wasn't giving me what I hungered for. I wanted to work with people. Marketing. I was thinking marketing works with people. And then I know marketing works with money. Um, that was not fulfilling. And I was doing my own therapy at the time. My memories were starting to bubble up, and I was getting more and more unhappy as I was getting more and more successful in my career. And I thought, this makes no sense.
Mm,
I'm successful. I'm in therapy. Everything should be good, right? And it wasn't, because I was walking a path that was not aligned for me. Sure, I could do the marketing, sure, I could do the research, but that is not what I was put here to do. And as I was healing my own wounds, I was realizing that more and more. And so I ended up going back to school, and I knew from the beginning that I wanted to be a trauma therapist. Um, Even though I still was not fully healed when I entered graduate school. And in reality, I don't know exactly what fully healed means. It's not like it goes away, the wound doesn't go away. But you get to a point, and I remember one day waking up and feeling like, oh, okay, all that stuff that happened, it's still there, but I don't feel it in my body anymore. I don't, like, it's in the past. It's no longer in the present. And I'm no longer feeling triggered by a particular thing that typically would send me really off kilter. So it's a slow process, and you wake up one day and you're like, oh, this is what that feels like.
mm,
Um, an example of that would be grief work. So even my father died when I was 14, and it was very complex. It was complicated grief.
mhm.
And so as a therapist, I very interesting, not long-winded. Thank you, Randolph.
It
Thank you. I don't hear that very often. Um, I guess I can see the comments. That's great. So I actually avoided working with grief because I had not processed my own grief because of the complicated nature of it. And when I did my personal ketamine work, as I was training to be a psychedelic psychotherapist, I was able to process that piece. So, like, the healing continues, and I can work with grief now because it has been processed. But this is layers and layers and layers of healing that happens. And I wrote recently about the spirals that happen.
Mhm,
And it could be a spiral of ascension or a spiral of descending, like descending down into soul and uncovering new depths of the work. And so it's a journey. Healing is not a destination. It really isn't.
mm-mm. Yeah, and when you're sharing, one of the things that highlights for me is you can only really support someone to the extent that you've done the work yourself. Like you said, like, you hadn't faced grief in yourself. And so if you're uncomfortable with your own grief and you're with someone else's, like, it brings that up. And which is not to say that you need to be completely healed. I often find working with people, they'll bring something and, oh, like, it meets an edge in, and it's like a reminder of, okay, that's also the next thing for me to explore this so that I can be more of a resource in that place than in my own kind of spiral.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. You don't have to be completely healed, but you need to be healed enough that your stuff is not coming into the client session.
Right.
But healing is reciprocal. This is a download that I got a couple of years ago. And of course, I was like, oh, this is an original thought. No, it's not. It was written about like 40 years ago. About the reciprocity of healing. That when a practitioner is working with someone, they're helping, but they're also receiving, because it goes both directions. And like if I'm sitting with a client and I'm noticing either I'm really tired or I'm really irritable, it's like, oh, that's pointing somewhere. You need to go look at this thing over here. This is something that you still need to process.
Mm,
And really curious about how that shows up for you, because you also are a healer.
I am, yeah. Um, well, one of the things that happens is there seems to be something mysterious, like some sort of organizing intelligence. Because what will often happen is a new client will come in and they're dealing with almost the exact same kind of territory that at that particular moment. It's like so precise. And so here I am holding space for someone and I learn a tremendous amount. And um, pretty much what I do is almost all providing a safe container and reorienting their attention, their moment to moment experience happening in the body. Imagine in shoring up the place ignoring if they tend to like, hey, remember emotion going up there, and then just allowing their natural wisdom to arise. And so often I learn a lot. Like, I have one client right now who she's just amazing. She's navigating so much chronic health issues, like repression of sexuality from a lifelong, recognizing how that affected her marriage. Now she's on this like deep emotional, like dark night of the soul and just shows up every day with like, now this is what happened. Oh, now I moved through this and now I'm here. And it's like just witnessing her and her wisdom is teaching so much to me, in ways that are like precise of like, oh, there's a connection between like chronic health and vitality levels and connection to eros, and more generally of just like that continual willingness to show up and meet that edge. So that's one way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love, Mia just commented, we access the higher self in order to serve someone else, and then that helps us. And I would say, yes, absolutely.
Hmm.
And and actually, I want to tag on Mia's thought for a minute to go back to the question about how healing happens. It is not the clinician that does the healing. There
Yeah.
is an inner wisdom, a higher self. In psychedelics, we call it the inner healing intelligence. The practitioner is there to be a guide, to point the direction, but ultimately, we are innately whole. And
Mm,
so, healing is a process of sort of removing the obstacle, sort of like you would take a splinter out of your finger, and the finger heals itself. The psyche also wants to be whole and will move toward wholeness when you remove things that are causing pain.
mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. And I kind of want to circle back here a little bit to Genesis made a comment earlier of insecure. We're talking about secure, insecure attachment. Insecure attachment person in a relationship with a partner, it still feels so scary. And I just want to affirm and validate that. And I personally am someone with an insecure attachment system in a partnership with Mia, who just commented, in fact, who has a more secure attachment than I do in some way. And so much of the healing actually comes from like it's like we're taking turns with each other of holding that container of security. Like I'm here, I'm right here now in this moment. And it's like that allows the other to feel the fear. Like it's not about feeling secure, it's actually about feeling safe enough to feel the fear from whenever that came long ago. I think that's how we heal that attachment. It's not about making the pain go away, but being with the pain safe enough way. So much of healing is about that.
I completely agree. And this idea of secure attachment, anxious attachment, um, I sort of visualize like a frightened kitten or a cat that's like, oh God, they're terrified and they want food and they want love, but they actually are absolutely terrified to the point that they can't accept it. And you have to go very slowly. And
Yeah.
slowly they'll test the waters, right? And it doesn't mean they're not scared. It means they want the food and they want the love enough that they'll test the waters a little bit and then they'll pull back, right? It's so when you're working with a traumatized nervous system, it's sort of like a feral cat. And I remember when my husband and I were approaching getting married, and both he and I, this is our second marriage. We both have been married before. We both have, you know, secu- uh, insecure attachment styles. I would say we're both sort of hard earned secure now. And as we drew closer and closer to the date, it got frightening. And like that last little bit was so difficult. That last little gap, especially since we both have been married before and obviously it didn't work out. But once we did, it was like a melding and we came together and we are so incredibly solid, but man, was it hard to get here. And there's no like magic wand that you wave to allow your nervous system to feel safe. You sort of have to take a risk and see if you are met in that risk.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There's so many directions my mind is going hearing that. Uh,
You know, when you originally reached out, you talked about the messiness of healing.
hmm.
And what to me is this is one of those aspects.
Hmm.
And it is messy. It is frightening. And one of the most courageous things you can do is to test the waters and take those little risks.
Hmm. Hmm. Which includes often what I know both in myself and in others. It's like the willingness to be in the mess or to be the mess. Uh,
Mhm.
I feel like it's, I imagine sometimes almost like we're walking the world and we're all wearing these costumes that, like everything's all right. Like I know what's going on. I'm competent or I'm oriented. I have knowledge, I have wisdom, whatever. And it's almost like we're all kind of going in these like tight, really tight suits. But
Mhm.
actually beneath all of that, which is just affirmed to me again and again, the more I work with clients, the deeper relationships I have, and like the depths of any of us where true intimacy lives and true intimacy happens, it's like we're all just a roiling storm of conflicting impulses and emotions and pains and desires. Like true, it almost feels to me like what healing is what allows us to have genuine intimacy.
Mhm.
And genuine is being in that mess, in contact with the world, which could be anything from sunset to other human being. Does that resonate with you?
Oh, 100%. And it's very vulnerable to be in the mess and in contact. So many times, if we're feeling the mess, we go isolate. You know, like the crying on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m. Instead of writing about it on Substack, we're hiding it. We come into work the next day. We're like, "Hi, how you doing? Yeah, I'm doing great." And that's sort of what we're expected to do because we are all so uncomfortable with the other person's pain because we are uncomfortable with our own pain. And so while I'm a therapist through and through, I'm a human first. And that's one of the reasons that I do share that, yes, I'm a trauma survivor. Yes, I've had those moments of, curled up on the bathroom floor at 3 a.m. with the ugly cry. Um, and it's the reason that in excuse me, in the Chloe essays, I decided to include some of my own vulnerability as a therapist and my own fear, my own oh fuck moments in the session of like, oh, did I just do something bad?
Hmm.
Because I think that when we lead with vulnerability, we give permission for other people to be vulnerable as well and authentic. I'm not talking about vulnerability where, like, you go online and you cry because you want to be vulnerable. Like, that's not what I mean. What I mean is, there was a thing on, I don't know, I guess like TikTok for a while, people would just go on and just cry. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is authenticity, connecting to what is actually happening for you and allowing someone in to see that. Not the whole world, but a safe person or a small group of safe people.
Hmm. Yeah, it occurs to me that that part of why that's so courageous is because there's certain surrendering of control. Because often what's happening in there, like there's a lot that I'm not aware of, perhaps, like in my heart, in my body, in my emotions, and as I'm opening it up, it's like it's opening up Pandora's box. I don't know what's going to come out. I don't know what's there.
Mhm.
But it's also part of what's valuable because without that space to open up and feel that, I might not get to know that thing that's alive or burning, or this desire, that secret desire that I've never named because I've never gone there and felt it fully.
Yes. Well, and Jung talks about this with the golden shadow. When we do our shadow work, and shadow, for anyone who's you may have heard the term shadow and think, oh, that's the dark side of ourselves. Not really. It's not the dark side. It's the side that we have disowned. It's the side that we don't want to look at. So it's in the shadow because we don't want to look at it. But Jung talks about the golden shadow, which is the gift that is hidden within the aspects that we don't want to look at. And if we can't allow ourselves to be vulnerable and authentic, we will never access those gifts in exile.
Hmm. Yeah.
You see, we have a comment here. It's a long comment. Give me
There-
a minute to read it.
I'll read it out loud. There's this
Oh,
thought I got, and I wonder what you think. A big part of healing is allowing the movement and flow of energy within, no matter if that energy is positive or negative, high or low frequency. It all has to move and eventually be let go of, and we allow ourselves to be in that oscillation.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, that oscillation. You mentioned earlier, like the upward spiral and the downward spiral, and I've al- of
Yeah.
it so much of as well healing work. They actually talk about this, like the Heart Math Institute, for example, talks about heart rate variability as a measure of nervous system resilience. Our ability to like go high and low and oscillate in between is our resilience, because though too are there moments when joy is the natural response and where grief is the natural response. The access to the full range of our capacity is what allows us to be present with the diversity and complexity of life. At least one way I do.
Yes. No, absolutely. And just as you were talking, a book title popped into my mind, Full Catastrophe Living by John Kabat-Zinn. Highly recommended. It's a very accessible, easily digestible book about mindfulness-based stress reduction.
Mm.
And I never understood the title. I mean, what the hell? Full catastrophe living? What does that mean? And a friend of mine told me one day, she's like, oh no, that's from the movie Volta the Greek. And I'd never seen the movie or read the book. And apparently, at one point, this character is saying, "Ah, yes, it's the full catastrophe. Like, oh, life, it's so vibrant. It's all the good. It's all the bad. It's all the things. It's that
Mm,
oscillation."
mhm. Yeah, like, all embracing, none of it's rejected.
Yes. And I love that Charmaine is talking about positive, negative, high, low frequency because we see so much about, oh, high vibes, good vibes only. And I think that's a real mistake. The good vibes only, or high vibes only, or my sarcastic self, I am very sarcastic, is, unicorns farting rainbows. Uh, that is not going to take us anywhere. That is cutting off a big part of us. And when we do that, that is spiritual bypassing, and that is not healing. Healing is the oscillation, the spiraling up, spiraling down, the heart rate variability going up and down, and finding the rhythm. Yeah,
Mhm,
I love how you compared it to HRV. I think that's a wonderful comparison.
mhm. Yeah, and the spiritual bypass, I feel like where that like, the mix-up that happens there, again, a place that healing happens is when, like, that loving, compassionate, high vibe presence is able to make contact with the pain, with the ache, with the grief, with the loss, with the fear, and embrace, like, "Okay, you're okay. Like, it's okay that you're welcome, you're loved in the fear, the pain, in the ache," rather using the high vibe to escape the lower vibrational things, as if
Yes,
lower vibrations aren't as important as high ones.
yes. I started thinking about. I was like, we're in a crisis of Remy's the guest house. Oh my gosh. Yes, Alicia. Yes, yes, yes. Um, we're in this crisis of comfort seeking. And turns out there's actually a book by that name, The Comfort Crisis. I haven't read it yet, but I love the title. And we go into this seeking comfort, seeking distraction, avoiding discomfort and suffering in any way we can. Maybe that is through food or sex or substances or shopping or eating or binging Netflix, or scrolling social media. We will do anything to avoid the discomfort of being present with suffering, with our pain. And that kind of bypassing, what it does is it puts you into a trap. Because every time you ignore or avoid, it's like it gets louder and louder and louder. My same friend and colleague who taught me about the title Full Catastrophe Living coming from Zarba the Greek, she has this wonderful analogy about emotions that we push down into the basement. And she's like, we push those emotions into the basement, they go down there and they pump iron and they get stronger and then they, come up and overwhelm.
Yes. Yeah, that makes me think of, like, shadow work as well. Like, often when you're doing shadow work and the shadow comes out of wherever it was, it looks like devastatingly ugly or mean or something like that, and it's one of my teachers like, "Yeah, like, remember, that's not just your shadow, that's your shadow after decades of confinement and imprisonment." Like, yeah, it might be a little angry when it comes out, but that's not necessarily its nature.
Right. And if you stay with it, and you're patient and you sit with it, you hold it, you listen to it, you treat it like almost another being, it softens. And it's not
Yes.
nearly as frightening. Going back to the feral cat analogy, a feral cat can do some damage. Um,
Mm,
but once you calm them down, and sometimes you'll see stories of, whether it was a cat or a dog that was neglected and, mean, and ultimately they become the most loving creature once they feel safe.
mm,
So it's not looking scary because that's their defense, but it's not really who they are, who they want to be. And we are very much like that too, or we can be.
mhm, mhm. Totally agree. And I'm having there's a question that's been like circling for me about it's something. Okay, I run into this challenge sometimes when I'm like onboarding a client, talking about comfort and like how healing happens and the pain of it. Oftentimes it's almost like the good news is like whatever you're feeling, you can feel better. You can heal. Healing is possible. It's absolutely possible. But the bad news is often like, but it's not going to be necessarily pleasant. It's not going to be a walk in the park. Pain, at least in my view, is like you have to feel like in order to heal, you have to feel the pain.
Mhm.
Uh, you can't bypass that. In order to heal grief, you have to feel the grief. In order to heal anger, you have to feel the anger. So it's often like, people are coming to me. They're like, I have this thing I want to get rid of. And I'm like, okay, I hear that. And it will change. And we have to actually befriend that first. And it might look like crying a lot. It might look like, okay, like we're going to actually, grit teeth and like growl to let that anger move through the body.
Mhm.
And sometimes I'm like a little hesitant, like, ooh, do I say that? Like, this is the only way. Maybe there is another way, but I haven't found it. And so I'm curious your thoughts about that. Is that the only way? And if not, what else is there?
I think so. I don't think that there's an easy way. I actually remember at the beginning of, oh gosh, what is Brene Brown's the first book that she really broke out with?
Wasn't it the
I don't,
power of vulnerability?
no, no, I'm forgetting the name of it. Anyway, she's talking about her own distaste for vulnerability I think it's in the preface. And she's talking to her therapist, and she's like, I just want to skip the vulnerability part. And can I just do that? And her therapist says no. And her response is, well, shit. And I thought that was, no, it's not Atlas of the Heart. It was before that. It's before Rising Strong. Um, it's bugging me that I'm not remembering it right now. But yeah, we cannot bypass the pain. And I love that you talked about gritting your teeth and growling. Folks, that's not metaphorical, that's real.
Yeah.
Sometimes you literally need to do that. You need to let it out. But it's not okay, this is bugging me now. I have to look it up. Brene Brown, Daring Greatly.
Oh, yes. That's it.
Daring Greatly. Yeah. um and for the folks who are you're not typing it, but you may be thinking, oh, but she's problematic. Perhaps, but she's also one of the most quotable authors out there. So I'm still going to quote her. Um, no, it's not just about catharsis. Yes, dare to feel. Yeah, catharsis by itself is not healing. Because if we just go and we have a big cathartic movement, we cry, we yell, we scream, we growl, but we don't do anything else with it, then it's temporary. So we actually need to integrate that as well. But you do have to feel it. Um, and I wanna make sure we're not see Little Spirit Books is asking, is this related to what we're talking about? A little bit, yeah. In deep silence, healing unfolds when the self conscious observes the subconscious mental and emotional patterns. The
Mm-hmm.
nervous system moves, allowing the lower frequencies of horse's pain to move.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I think that is what we're talking about. Because when we repress the lower frequencies, the pain, then it can't move. It stays stuck. It stays stagnant, and so we have to allow it to move in whatever way. In somatic healing, it might be through movement, And so the encouragement is allow that movement to happen. If you want to move your shoulders, do that. If you want to roll your neck, do that. If you want to cry, if you want to growl, if there are words that want to come up, so much of it is allowing and
Mhm.
holding space, allowing, and that can feel very messy.
Yes. Yes, it does. And yeah, and it also occurs to me, like, for the self-conscious witness, like, there's that part of us, the self is learning through this. It's like, this, like, growl movement thing, and then, oh, now there's an image of my dad coming up, and it's like, "Oh, I didn't know that this anger was connected to my dad until I let the energy move through me." Um,
Yeah.
and then there's also the, like, once that contact is made, that same energy that might have been locked up in a tension pattern becomes available for the conscious self to direct in life. Like, "Oh, wow, this anger actually, like, has a lot of motivation in it and drive, and if I befriend this, now I can use that to achieve goals or, um, create art or whatever it is that one wants to do."
That reminds me of an experience I had years ago when I was training in sensory motor psychotherapy. And this was in year 2 of the training. And a lot of this training, I mean, it's didactic, but it's experiential as well. So I mean, it's a 3-year training. It's quite intense. And we were doing an exercise, and we work on each other. So we're in a dyadic pair, a therapist and a client, and then there's an assistant teacher who's observing. And I was the client, and this person was working on a particular technique for working with developmental trauma. And I went into an early shock trauma, a particular event that happened. And I remember our assistant trainer was there, who was somebody who I knew outside of the class, and he was like, "Do you wanna go here?" I'm like, "Well, I want to allow this person to practice the skill, but if we can, let's go there." Anyway, we did this whole piece of work, and it integrated both the shock trauma, which is an incident, and the developmental trauma, which is more, ongoing, chronic. And I felt after that, I had this whole release of energy in that I had access to energy that I did not expect. I expected to be exhausted after that
Mm,
piece of work, and I wasn't. It was like it unlocked a whole part of my life force that had been held back.
mhm. Yeah. It's like that energy had been bound in that shock this whole time and then finally was free.
Yes, yes. And Little Spirit Books is saying, as a physical therapist, we encourage movement. As a biodynamic craniosacral therapist, we allow space for silence. The balance is finding the third aspect, the intuition of the practitioner. Yes. And
Mm,
learning to listen to and trust that intuition. And that is the art of the practitioner that goes beyond the theory. It's
mhm,
you have to know the theory, but then ultimately you move away from that and you lean into the intuition, and that is when the art form takes place. And
mm,
I love that you mentioned biodynamic craniosacral. I was blessed to have a biodynamic craniosacral acupuncturist when I lived in California, and he was amazing. Biodynamic work was just absolutely beautiful, and there is a silence to it and
mm,
a dropping in, very deep presence.
mm. Have me curious to try that myself. Um, and I have one more thing to touch on. We're approaching the end here. But, one of your other posts that stirred me was the one it was like a note that you had made, and then I read the article about the connection between, m abuse and the military. And maybe even more broadly than that, the connection between personal healing and the political.
Mhm.
And that that's something that I think about, ideate on a lot. And it feels particularly relevant right now as the world is going through the
Yeah.
spasms that it's going through. Um, and I'm curious if you have any words or thoughts you want to share on that relationship.
Oh my goodness. Yes, I do. So in school, we're sort of taught that therapy is supposed to be apolitical. And I'm sorry, but no, absolutely not. And my social worker friends are like, absolutely not. In fact, social work is about engaged,
Mm,
in particular. And going back to what we were saying about sort of the inner healing intelligence and the movement toward organicity and wholeness, and if you take away what is causing pain, then we will automatically move toward wholeness. Well, if we lived in a world where we weren't constantly experiencing harms, we wouldn't need so much therapy. And so I don't think that we can be apolitical, especially now.
yeah.
The political is personal and it is deeply involved in wounds and traumatization and re-traumatization.
Hmm.
And for people, I mean, my husband and I moved to Europe at the end of last year, but people in the United States, and even though as an American and you're also an American, we're sort of focused on what's happening in the US, but the US is not the only place it's happening. There are people who are literally in danger because of who they are. So we cannot look away. We cannot be apolitical. Um, and I have many soapboxes, and this is this is one of them. Um, yes, the essay that you're talking about comes from the movie of Waves and War. And one of my clients had asked me to watch it, and he's not a veteran. I'm like, why? But okay, I'll watch it. And I'm like, okay, it's going to be another, veterans getting psychedelic work done. I've seen this. I know where it's going, except I didn't know where it was going. Because at the end, one of these Navy SEALs, he sits up because what's coming up for these veterans, these Navy SEALs, these serious, badass warriors. It's not the war trauma; it's their childhood trauma that's coming up. And this one guy says, "If we didn't abuse our children, would we even have a military?" And I went, "Oh, that's why you wanted me to watch it. That's
Mm,
why my client wanted me to watch it." And there is something that, I will just say organizations gain by keeping us distracted and traumatized, and I think we have to push back on that, and there are so many ways that we can resist,
mm,
and
mhm,
I think every bit of resistance is useful and needed. And healing is resistance. Speaking your truth is resistance. Feeling the pain is resistance. Being of service to others is resistance. Caring is resistance.
mm,
Speaking
mm,
out against extractive capitalism is resistance. And it
mm.
feels weird saying that as a former business owner, but when I woke up to it, I was like, oh, yeah, this is a problem.
Mm,
And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So each one teach one. And
mm,
people are waking up all around the world. I firmly believe that we are not through the suffering. We are at the very beginning. It is going to get worse. But I truly, truly believe in every cell of my body that we are going to come out on the other side. I really do. And it's going to be hard. It's going to be messy. But I have great optimism. As strange as that might sound, I am optimistic.
mhm. Yeah, I am too. And much like healing, it's going to involve going through the pain, not avoiding it. The painful times ahead of us as well. And I want to
Yeah,
highlight Annie just said 100% if we are kept traumatized, we are more controllable. And I just want to say, this is one of my own soapboxes here too, but just to say briefly, there's also a desire in me for a revolution in healing. When I hear you say that in school you were taught to remain apolitical, I'm like, well, that's part of the problem
Yes.
is healing has been kept in this like individualistic silo where if I'm feeling unwell, it is my responsibility if I'm feeling unwell, in as much as I'm the only one who can do the work to heal it. But the notion that my feeling unwell is my problem and not because the world itself has conspired to make me feel that way through cutting me off from social connection, from cutting me off from land, cutting me off from culture and tradition and history. Um,
Hmm.
I feel a desire to for the healing world to change in much as like we are actually embracing that as the spiritual and political act that it is, and really heal in service to the world becoming a better place. Uh,
Yes. Yes, and one of the I think sicknesses, the illnesses of the Western mind is this rugged individualism. And I think that there is well, no, I don't think, I know there's a movement from the individual toward the collective. And one of the reasons I chose to sell my business, I still work there part time as a therapist because I love the team, I love the people, I love the new owner, but I want to work on new models of healing. And I think community and collectivism is the core of it.
mhm.
We cannot heal in isolation. We need each other. We've always needed each other, but especially now, we cannot hold this shadow alone. We must do it in community.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I did mention in the beginning before we hopped on, I wanted to announce a program at the end, and it's a good segue, which is I'm launching a program that starts a week from Thursday. It's called Deepen. It's a 12-week container, and the intention is to like be together around this kind of issue. Like what are our personal aches? How do they relate to the aches of the world? And how do we hold them in such a way that we discover the gift in them for ourselves, for one another, so that we can dream a better world into being? Because the center of every grief is love. At the center of every anger is the knowing that something could be better and different. Um, so if anyone is interested in that, feel free to reach out. Or if you want a little taste, I'm doing a free gathering on Thursday called Soften. That's like just a little dip into the medicine that we would then explore more broadly in 12 weeks.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a wonderful time spent with you, Daniel, and thank you to everyone who joined us today.
Yeah. Thank you, Linnea, and thank you, everyone. And yeah, maybe we do it again sometime.
All right. Be well.
You too. Bye for now.